YouTube comments from a video titled, "How much food can I grow in 1 year?" Part 11.
At Amit Paddle 1 wrote,
Alex, you are inspired me a bit to grow my own veggies again. I am belonging to farmer family back in India. I love growing all possible stuffs my own, but I really loved the way you presented and inspired others to do same. Keep going on, brother, thanks.
At Jeff Taylor 5370 wrote,
Look up companion planting. It's especially useful if you have limited space. The idea is that you plant stuff together that helps each other. One of the more famous is the three sisters: corn, beans, and squash. The corn stalk gives something for the beans to climb. The beans put nitrogen into the soil, and the squash leaves shade the ground to hold in moisture. You will find all sorts of variations, all with different benefits like soil fertilization and bug protection. You had mentioned chickens, and I highly recommend them. Not sure what the laws are where you live, but backyard chickens are great. They eat bugs and even small rodents. They give you eggs, and their waste is an extremely rich fertilizer. I think 3 to 6 is perfect size for a backyard flock. I have 20 chickens right now, and in the winter, I let them roam my garden. When I clean the coop, I dump the litter in the garden during the winter. Also, look up vertical planters. You could grow a ton of greens and strawberries in vertical planters. They take very little space, and you can get extremely high yields. Also, for potatoes, look up potato towers. With a tower, you could get 100 or more potatoes from a 3x3 tower. If you're looking for a natural pesticide, boil hot peppers and save the liquid. Put it in a sprayer and add a couple of drops of oil of oregano and mint oil. It will keep most bugs off, I've found. The downside is you will have to reapply after you water or it rains. And in my area, it seems to attract deer for some reason. The mint maybe. Great video.
at Lana Star Mountainman wrote,
Great video. If you're interested in learning how to start winter budding and other tips to get your home garden started earlier in the spring, or even grow year-round, Hamu, and I can give some advice. Especially if you're interested in learning about using lighting to start your seedlings indoor before moving outdoor once it's warm enough, or if you're interested in growing fully indoors or in a lit greenhouse.
at Modern Neanderthal wrote,
Nice video. My mother always had a garden. You might want to grow black raspberries. Very tasty. Put out a bird bath because birds love water and they love bugs that eat your crops.
at Porous Law Student wrote,
I don't think you need to use a whole potato for each plant. You can save a lot of money by only using 1/2 to 1/4 of a potato for each new plant.
at Dadgammer 9097 wrote,
Thanks, dude. Can't wait for it to get warmer so I can finish digging out the bamboo in my garden and replace it with a nice raised bed for veg.
at Andy Billick Show 260 wrote,
So what's the plan for this year? I have tomato plants already in buckets. Perhaps 30 or so in 7 containers. I'll feed them 100% natural fish water. I have 23 goldfish roughly 1 year old that feed my plants. Arugula and other lettuces love it as well as strawberries. Also, rumor has it that the next pandemic is going to make COVID look like the sniffles. What will people do during shortages? I think the more people that grow their own will take at least some burden off the supply chain. I've even investigated growing cotton. I found it'll take 1 cotton bush to grow 3/4 of a shirt.
at ELE 4853 wrote,
Super cool. I am actually thinking about doing it on my backyard. I have a question though. Discounting the initial investment on the wood and things to make the boxes, what is the price comparison?
At Remilabo77 wrote,
I've had a similar problem when I chose to make my own lasagna. It was around $40 US dollars if I remember correctly compared to the store-bought, which is around $15. Although it could be argued that I had almost double the amount and a better quality.
At Ronroca4387 wrote,
How much sunlight did your garden get? I wanted to start my garden, but my backyard only gets sunlight in the mornings. Home blocks the sun in the evening.
At Cedric3973 wrote,
When I started gardening at my new house, all the seeds and supplies cost around €100. By mid-August, I had harvested corn that would have cost that much alone, and that was only 10% of my garden space.
John Boy Incoled wrote,
The purple carrots need a humid environment to grow. I know they have a better chance to grow in spring and fall in a warm greenhouse with consistent mist.
At Chad Chatterson8421 wrote,
Damn him more and more convinced to sorry my nana and do what she did, garden with veggies. When I was younger, I hated working tear, but older I get more I understand that was great thing to have nice and fresh garlic, beans or some fruits.
At France Vermac 2025 wrote,
You should let the potato plants flower and then let the plants die before you dig the potatoes up. You will be amazed at the size difference. You can also double or triple the quantity of fruits by continuously covering the plants with soil, leaving only the very top of the plant above ground.
At Aubert79 wrote,
Well, this guy has planted some potatoes and tomatoes, okay. I did same last summer, okay. Nice to see man in the garden. Okay. And in the end of the video you did what? Pet bees, OMG. You're huge, man. Some sarcasm should be considered in first part of my message.
At Video Jiroki wrote,
When I cook vegetables, I appreciate the time I spend working at my job to earn the money by producing a service that other people like and pay for it in order to purchase the vegetables that have been produced by clever and hard-working farmers and put in a supermarket by a fast and fascinating logistics. Thanks to my previous generations that managed to adopt capitalism and the government doing its best, I hope to not interfere with the economy. Meanwhile, I like gardening too.
At Julia Hackle 543 wrote,
Slugs hate copper, like they won't go over it, because their moisture react with it. So if you put a thin piece copper on the ground, about 5 to 10 centimeters of copper sheet around your vegetable garden, they won't eat at your stuff anymore.
At Exine wrote,
Use an automatic sprinkler. Combine a water pump with a timer and nozzle if you have to. Ask your electrical or plumbing friends to help you. You could even make it solar powered.
As Shar's Footer Videos wrote,
Love what you're doing. A couple tips if you don't mind. Wait till the foliage of the potato leaves completely dies out, then hold off for another week or two before harvesting. That's how you'll get the biggest potatoes. Don't plant all the rows at once so you're not stuck with a ton of potatoes. Do maybe a row, then another row a month later, and so forth. I think it's called succession planting.
At Goobernuff wrote,
A good way to get nitrogen for your plants is to fill up a water tank with water and then put a heap of hay in it and let it ferment for a bit. Epsom salts diluted in water is also good for yield.
Clash Blue Light wrote,
You say at the end of the video that you've seen the process from beginning to end, but you haven't quite gotten there yet. Besides curing the onions, you haven't done any preservation. I would highly suggest you learn canning and pickling, since both are incredibly fun and also great for preservation. This also pertains to your comment about having enough food to last the winter. That may be true, but it's not only you that has to last the winter. The food also has to make it that long without going bad. Attempting to go over 3 months without letting any food go bad is the hardest part of lasting through the cold season, and what killed many families back in the olden days.
At Mr. M12345 wrote,
First time coming across your videos. Good stuff. Are you going crops this year? Now that you own all of the tools and garden beds, your costs should be reasonable and you have much more knowledge now.
A.10K wrote,
A great review of your year in the garden. Are you going to continue next year as well as the beekeeping? I enjoyed the statistics, but would have preferred more detail on the cost to set up. Congratulations on a great job, well done. I am looking forward to the beekeeping video and have subscribed.
At MCon84 wrote,
I tried growing courgette zucchini for us Americans last year. The squash bugs destroyed them utterly. I couldn't find any way to eradicate the bugs. You learn a lot the first time, and you won't have to spend as much next year. You have good soil and raised beds already, so the cost will be just your seeds and fertilizer.
At Wayne Shingler 9664 wrote,
Give yourself a bit more credit. The tools you bought could be used to work a much larger garden, so there's a resource that you're underutilizing. At any rate, you should amortize that cost over 5 years. The wood wasn't actually necessary at all. The compost was necessary, but could have been made from yard and kitchen waste had you had a bin to make it in and started well in advance. It's always hard to be patient with potatoes, but yours could probably have gotten much larger had you waited. Congratulations on the onions. I was especially impressed by your carrots. They're notoriously hard to get started. Is there a community garden in the neighborhood where you could get an allotment? Imagine if you grew the same amount of food behind your house next year, but also grew an equivalent amount elsewhere. This would allow you to rotate crops too, to avoid blights like the one that affected your tomatoes. Try growing all these same things elsewhere next year, and maybe grow beets, cabbages, broccoli, beans, and herbs behind your house. Oh, I meant to say, the disease which afflicted your courgettes, we call them zucchinis here, appears to have been powdery mildew. It's encouraged by overwatering, an easy mistake for an attentive beginner or anyone gardening in a wet climate. The cure for it is to catch it early and spray it with a solution of water and baking soda. Make sure to get the underside of the leaves as well. Regular treatments should help keep the mildew under control until your plants finish fruiting. Great job. You have a lot to be proud of.
At Immature8R wrote,
You can cut your spuds into quarters, assuring that each quarter has at least one eye, and obtain 4 times the crop. Also, you can plant maize American corn as a support for your pea or vine veggies, getting a double bang for the garden. I would also advise you to grow soybeans as they fix nitrogen to the soil, reducing the amount of fertilizer required. Chickens are great. They eliminated all the insects around my house and garden, gave me eggs, and excellent fertilizer. The only drawback with chickens is that if want to leave or vacation, you must find someone to care for them while you are away. Chickens are 24/7, 365.
The Sea God Wolf wrote,
I would recommend checking out the biointensive method, specific approach, tailored to make the most of the little space you have, with a focus on sustainability of the soil and self-sufficiency.
Booktube 11 wrote,
You said you had, but you made 4 beds narrowed by wood, so the net area where actually something could grow is less than the 15 square meters. Please could you tell me how large is the area within the 4 beds you used to grow the plants?
Odir here wrote,
So the top 54 leading countries spend roughly $700 billion annually in subsidizing agriculture production. That's one reason why food is as abundant and cheap as it is. Otherwise, there would be far few farmers, far less agricultural output, and food costs would be much higher. So it's not always worth it to farm your own food when your tax dollars are going towards lowering your food costs already.
Greg Buckley 1078 wrote,
BEE keeping is not a good thing. Think about your native animals, flora and fauna. Little insects and birds that relied on the nectar and pollen from your local area, but you introduce the bee, and the bee wipes out all the little critters you don't even know are in your environment. Please think twice about this.
At Night Scream 452 wrote,
Your first few years of growing your own food will usually be at a small loss, as you're learning what works for your land and how to exactly to promote growth and the cost of setting up /tools. But once you get the hang of it, you'll save money. Especially with herbs and spices.
At Crazy Gaming IG6QQ wrote,
So enough to sustain yourself for a few weeks. To reach full sustainability all year, you would need to grow at least 26 times as much, according to my meager math skills. So the size of your garden x 26.
At Seanfugel 920 wrote,
It doesn't really justify the time and cost going into this. Unless you have a lot of free time for this hobby, sure. But still, even then you're saving what? A few cents. It's worse when people grow inside with hydroponics that really doesn't justify the cost.
At Melittle Parody 2277 wrote,
Very nice, thank you for sharing. Also, you can reuse your small potatoes as seed for next year. In the same idea, you should let a few carrots to grow fully to gather seeds for next year. It's both cost-effective and better because the plants that grew on your garden are the most fitted for your local climate as opposed to the ones that died. Lastly, planning your garden will increase your yields a lot. But it's really awesome for a first year. Very nice.
And Nick Schillen wrote,
I grow my tomatoes in terracotta glazed pots now as if they get blight. You can't use the same soil. This also keeps the soil warmer, but they do need watering regularly.
And Sebastio wrote,
Hello, Alex. I looked through the comments but couldn't find an answer. What is the theme of the beds you made? Length x width x height. Are you still using these beds? Thanks for this share.
E.R. Stevens 9984 wrote,
Can't start a garden in February. That's funny. Most places in Canada, nothing goes in the ground before May 24th, just in case you get a late freeze or wicked snowstorm.
At self-replicating_whatnot wrote,
You need a pretty large field if you want to get an amount of vegetables that is worth the effort. That or stupidly advanced hydroponics. And a way to store it all. This, on the other hand, is just playing around with plants. Not that it's a bad thing, just does nothing for self-sufficiency.
Evujin wrote,
This is great. I grew up on a farm until I was 15 and was a market gardener for 15 years before I retired. You are doing it right, Alex. Don't worry about the startup costs as they will amortize over 10 to 15 years. Good luck.
A trail guy wrote,
I've never seen anyone plant the whole potato in the soil. We put them in a warm, bright environment for a couple weeks, so they start to sprout from the eyes, and then cut the potato into 2 to 3 pieces, with an eye in the center of the Q5, then plant them.
At Sodabru 1764 wrote,
In my opinion, the two biggest questions you didn't answer were as follows. 1. Did you feel any better doing this? Besides the exercise. 2. Did they taste any better than store-bought produce?
At Timothy Whiteheadson wrote,
For an accurate profit-loss analysis, you need to measure the value of your time. In your case, if you are getting enjoyment from the process, then that is a positive entertainment value. And if you wouldn't be working at that time anyway, then there is minimal negative value. If you are making money on YouTube telling the story, then even better. I expect these considerations far outweigh the cost of materials or relative cost of the vegetables in the supermarket. If you had a lot more land, then that may change.
At Keith Olson wrote,
Pro tip: when planting tiny seeds, for each row's worth of seeds mix well with a 1/4 cup for example of sugar, corn meal, sand, etc. That will make it much easier to distribute them evenly.
At Inigo Loyola 1781 wrote,
Sorry if this was already commented, but keep in mind you can do 2 yields of crops in 1 year. Example, spinach in very early spring, kale as a fall crop. However, I don't know how much compost you would need to refill the box for starting kale once the spinach is done. Point being, I reckon you could get more by strategically selecting plants such that you can grow them back to back on the same plot, fitting the time puzzles together, if that makes sense. Cool video, cheers.
At Zero Fighter wrote,
The real thing about growing versus buying is that a portion of the price you pay at the market is compensation for the time and energy that goes into growing. These costs are reduced by mass production and mechanization, but they're still part of the total expense to the consumer. Then there's the markup that allows the retailers to stay in operation. And of course, you can't forget the markup for storage and transportation. On such an stellar scale, the costs to store literal truckloads of produce, then load them up into individual trucks, each driven by a human being, to deliver the haul to stores everywhere. Again, costs go down as scale rises, but with the rising scale, you also need to employ more people and use more specialized equipment. If a company attempted to compete with a company like Dole, but made it a point to do everything by hand, using simple gardening tools, you'd be paying 20 pounds per tomato or other piece of produce, maybe more. A few square meters and a hand trowel produces nothing when compared to 80 plus acres and 4 people with diesel-powered harvester connected to a GPS system that optimizes and corrects minor inconsistencies in their steering to maximize yield per pass through the fields. You don't start a garden in your backyard because you'll save a measurable amount of money. You start a garden because you want to have and maintain a garden.
At Expar wrote,
Next year you won't need all the compost if you use the potato plants as compost. Work all that stuff back in the soil and you'll enrich the soil. Also, make sure to rotate your crops next season. Different crops absorb different nutrients from the soil, making rotation mandatory to maintain healthy soil. Great job! Congratulations!
At Stronger and Wiser 2023 wrote,
Saved 64 quid, but put in 150 hours of labor. That doesn't matter though if you enjoyed yourself in the process. It goes to show that people really can grow their own food on a small plot of land, even as a beginner. Well done, mate.
The Bakararjan wrote,
14-1. I've got chickens, they do not eat slugs.
They eat the slug eggs larvae or something. That helps too. If you want slug eaters, you should get ducks. But they are messy and more destructive than chickens.
At Istvan 4713 wrote,
Hey Alex, thanks for the movie for snails. There is a very good way to fight them without poisons. Put some beer in a cup and cover the top to prevent the rain fills it up, but keep space under the cover to let them go into the cup with the beer. Somehow they love beer, and when they goes into the cup, can't come out, so they will drown. However, here in Hungary, we have different species like you showed with that nice orange belly, but I think you should give a try. Not needs to be expensive beer, cheapest the best. And of course, put more cup of drinks to them, but interestingly, they find the free pub from pretty far. Take care.
At Ketogenarian 6281 wrote,
We had an allotment, and the best way to save money is all year-round planting. Example, first early spuds, then second early. When they come up, start the late spud. When your onions crop, plant your winter veg like sprouts and cabbages. Would have been nice to see the full year planting, but nevertheless a great post. Thanks.
At Hayden 24789 wrote,
Food always tastes better when you grow it yourself. Now the garden is established, the cost come down, but don't look at it as a cost-saving exercise. It's the knowledge that you can keep and pass down. Gardening or growing fruit/veggies is getting lost in today's society. People are so dependent on the supermarket.
At Michael Jones 6832 wrote,
Fresh herbs cost heaps here in Australia and go off quick. Solution's 60-liter plastic tub, few holes in bottom for drainage, couple bags of dirt. Half the time a herb plant is cheaper than a tiny pack from supermarket. Best thing is once planted, they are available on demand. Things like mint, spring onion, etc. Put stem or leftover bottom/root in water, and it turns into a free plant. There is something very therapeutic about growing something as well. That is priceless to me. Also, things like rosemary and thyme and oregano are really hard to kill and last for years.
A God of Dream 9112 wrote,
Why you plant whole potato? You can just cut those potato into 2 to 3 parts as per sprouts and plant them. I would plant whole section with 1 row of your potato.
At Adam Miller 2606 wrote,
Best thing for slugs, geese or ducks. Don't know how feasible that is for you. Geese love those slimy little pests, and they make good eggs and Christmas or Yule dinners.
At Robert Evans 8024 wrote,
Alex, this was such an interesting and inspiring video. Good for you. You seem like such a nice guy. I've been gardening since I was about 8 years old in Philadelphia, PA. I'm 57 now. I hope you will continue to enjoy gardening and not let anything get in your way. That greenhouse was awesome. I've been wanting to get a greenhouse for years, but my backyard is too small. You seem like the kind of guy I wouldn't mind knocking on my door to take my daughter to the prom. I hope your roommates appreciate your efforts and will afford you a little more space, even join in on the gardening. A little advice, you might have left the potatoes grow a bit longer until the tops flower and then begin to die back. You'll get bigger potatoes and a larger harvest as far as pounds. Or do you say kilos? Also, I hope you will start a compost bin to recycle yard waste and kitchen scraps along with dried leaves, etc. It's extremely beneficial to the soil health and the environment. I encourage you to check out the YouTube videos by Charles Dowding, who advocates the no-dig/no-till method of gardening. This man is a god when it comes to gardening. Very nice guy, and he makes a lot of videos on so many different aspects, including compost. I hope to see you doing more videos like this. Stay safe. P.S. Love the pizza oven. Very clever how you use sand as a form and the other steps. I was thinking about using chicken wire between the layers to add strength and to help prevent it from cracking.
And my time is your dime wrote.
Well done. I hope that isn't treated lumber, however. Many plants should stay longer before harvest as well. Tatters, for one. Onions could have stayed in ground much longer.
At KFG 7248 wrote.
There's a distinct flavor of fruit and vegetables that come directly from the garden to a farmer's market as opposed to what you buy at the grocery store. Soil and water has to be healthy to produce the best quality nutrients and greatest health benefits.
At 83 WTJL wrote.
The slug story is hilarious and awful. I'm sorry it happened if it's any help. One time I was at my friend's ancient house in Hampshire and ended up with a false widow making a web on my jaw and down my shirt while I slept. I woke up to it on my face, too lol, great video. It seemed such a satisfying process.
At Josie Pichelaris Soen wrote.
This seems very educations. No, so much a step-by-step as a primer to get someone interested in doing similar things. I find the idea the process is renewable interesting. You take the potatoes and replant some of them and repeat. I'm not sure how you renew the soil. Same with pretty much all the crops. You can get seeds and keep planting. I'm not sure you'd ever break even though without find a life hack for making cheap fertilizer, and that might be gross.
At Ruapadrovalarinho 5560 wrote.
You are happy, I am happy. Fukuoka said something like agriculture is more about caring for the soil than caring for the planos. If soil is good, plants are good. That's why happy. If you go by regenerative agriculture, you will have a nice calm, no-war process aligned with the power of life in all his forms. If you don't does before, I think you're gonna love syntropic agriculture. Just Google it.
At Catherine Morrow 8673 wrote.
Great job. Next growing season, you will just need to add a bit of compost to each box and turn it into the existing soil. Purchase seeds, bulbs, and potatoes. If you have leftover seeds, you can use them as well. You can do succession planting and put radishes, small green onions, and other seeds into the garden every 2 weeks to keep vegetables coming. With your bees, not only will you get honey, but you now have pollinators. I always plant different types of flowers because they attract butterflies and other pollinators as well. I just found your channel, and I look forward to seeing other videos.
At David Struve Designs wrote.
Gardening, especially vegetable growing, is never profitable on the first year, or even the second in many cases. It's only usually after this period that it becomes profitable, or at least provides as much as you spent. Next year, you won't have to buy the tools you used, or the wood for the beds, or nearly as much compost if you add the leaf cuttings and skins from your crops back into the soil. And you can always take some of the seeds from your crop and replant them, lowering how much you spend on seeds next year. Plus, now you have more knowledge about what kinds of pests you have to deal with which you didn't know beforehand, and what crops won't do so well in your particular soil composition, which you can still improve if you get a pH soil testing kit. Also, adding coarse sand to the clay will do wonders for drainage in general, and for the plants. All these issues add up the costs in the first year or two of growth. Next year's costs will be more down to dealing with the pests and diseases, a bit of compost or extra fertilizer, which I don't think you use this first year. But gardening is not alone in this issue. Most brand new endeavors have higher initial costs and only become profitable after a certain amount of time as elapsed after it's all up and running. You've discovered R and D costs. And why TVs and GPUs and other things you buy are usually more expensive upon first launch, and why they get cheaper later on. But having said all that, 64 pounds worth of veggies in your first year from such a small plot of land is not something to be sniffed at. Very well done indeed. B.
Ed Angulian wrote,
How much plus/minus did you if you take out the costs that you will not have next year if you grow again? Also, how did your own produce taste compared to the supermarkets? More taste.
Ed Abstraction wrote,
With time and practice, you will figure out how to yield more bountiful crops. Like instead of growing potatoes in the raised bed, use an upright large garbage bin. Many videos on this method. I can usually get about 30 to 50 pounds of potatoes from 3 plants in a single bin. And instead of digging to find them, you just flip the bin over. Instead of growing your zucchini on the ground, grow them vertically. Your peas should not be the only thing on a trellis. Set up a pole or volleyball net and let the original stems weave through that, and watch how many more flowers you will get. Learning soil science and nutrients and when to use them also is a huge thing. Like knowing to add nitrogen in the beginning, then add your potassium and phosphate later will create way large yields.
Chiocciola Pedro Limarote.
Cry abelhas sem ferro, do Brazil, elas temomel mais gostoso, saudável e medicinal do mundo. E uvidizer que algumas so usadas para tratamento de doenças respiratórias.
Ed Jerome Whalen 6723 wrote,
What is the apparently electrical connection at 11:49 for? I am anxious to see what happens in your next year of raising produce. Good luck. Oh, I see you went off on a road trip. I'll be interested in seeing more of your video adventures.
At Nightfire 66 wrote,
Well, it's not worth it in 2 meters to of area. And using all compost soil is also a giant minus. But do you think in year 2 you could be in plus?
At MC Edziets wrote,
Not making a profit, but it's a good hobby to do. Plus, less grass cutting that sometimes can be a pain. And self-grown vegetables will always be better than supermarket ones.
At Papa Jeff 5486 wrote,
Your soil looks great. Good soil equals good vegetables. It's like save your pennies and the dollars will take care of themselves. Focus on the soil. You are going to love using that oven. Well done, man.
At Linda Woody 8501 wrote,
Excellent first-year effort. I would let the potatoes grow longer for larger size, harvest the tomatoes green if too many are eaten by slugs, as the tomatoes can ripen off fine, and harvest the zucchini smaller for better taste. I am going to plant many of these same vegetables in my own raised beds here in the Arizona, USA high desert garden. Best wishes on your coming 2023 vegetable garden. By the way, you got quality organic food that would be more expensive if you purchased it all in the market. You are correct that your initial investment was high, but you will have the beds for years and can use some of your previous year's seed next time. Later you will make a little dollar off your garden.
Kegstand OG wrote,
You may show a bit of a loss the first season, but you just set yourself up for many seasons of growth with minimal investment above your time. Seems like a great investment of time also.
At Micah Dealer wrote,
I realize that this is an old video, but I thought of some things you might want to consider for this year. When you harvest the potatoes, or the other root vegetables, kale, collards, cabbage, or other leaf vegetables can then go in the same place after harvest. Kale is my favorite, as it will grow well into the winter. London is warm enough that it might grow through the whole winter. You can trim a cook pot full and it will grow back. The downside, but not too bad of one, is the bugs. They like kale too, so you have to check for them when you harvest in warmer weather. However, during the winter, most bugs disappear. Another thing, tomatoes are susceptible to a lot of pests. However, cherry tomatoes grow fast and produce well. They also stand fairly tall so that a lot of pests don't make it too far up. Nice video. Good luck.
At Boysrus 61 wrote,
Have you figured out the slugs? I put broken up eggshells around the perimeter of my hostas, and that does the trick, so maybe it will work for some of your veggies.
At Jacchiometry 4418 wrote,
You might not have saved a lot this year, but you had quality organic real food. Good time to look for an allotment and grow more bulk. I loved the video and will be doing my first attempt this year.
At Infinity Square Eater Something wrote,
For your slugs, line your beds with copper and just pluck the slugs as you see them. Might take years to remove them all, as they do breed shudder, but no outside slugs will be able to get in.
Dadelweiss wrote,
You're not growing food, you're growing plants to eat. Plants don't exist to get eaten. They are the same living creatures, for God's sake. They even fucking defend teach'ems elfies to get eaten. You also don't call a homegrown pig food.
At Brewer__ wrote,
Looks like a bit of fun, but from an economical side of things, vegetables barely cost anything to begin with, and looks like you put a lot of time into keeping the plants healthy.
At Euratimus wrote,
A key to keeping costs down is to make use of all of the waste byproducts from your garden, and even from the stuff you are still getting from the shops, so you can make your own soil/amendments. Consider raising worms and giving them a good bit of the kitchen scraps. Much of the rest should be composted. But if you can do so legally in your area, it would be a good idea to also turn some of it into biochar, which you can then charge and add to your soil.
Koreshin wrote,
Just found this recommended by YT, and very well done documentary of your progress. Being a new horticulturist, there's always a huge learning curve. Sure, it doesn't feel like you made out in the end as far as costs go, but you made out in the long term. The first year would be the worst. 1. Startup costs. 2. Learning curve. 3. Those pesky bugs. However, next year will be far better as you can take what you learned and apply it to the next season. You can put out measures to keep the bugs out with slugs. If you put down wire mesh around your bed, that'll help. Do not use salt as that's bad for the plants. You could also put a small zap wire around your beds. Just be careful to not hit it yourself. You could also plant some herbs around your crops that'll help repel them. And the best part about growing your own food is the quality is far better than what you get in the store. Eating fresh foods taste better and are better for you. You may not know this, but grocery foods are picked before they are ripe and are ripened just before then hit the shelves. Tomatoes are picked green, stored in CO2 to keep them that way, and then exposed to O2 shortly before they reach the grocery store. Exceptions would be farmers' markets and such. The reason your plants turned brown and wilted were probably either to fungus, or possibly they got burned and couldn't get enough water to compensate. To help keep all the bugs and fungus in control, You can use neem oil. You can buy a concentration of about 100 milliliters for only a few dollars USD here and make a mixture in a spray bottle. Then spray everything down. This is 100% natural and you won't add nasty chemicals to your plants/soil. And safe to eat for us, too. Just needs to be reapplied after a rain, but don't have to go crazy and soak. Just a light misting is fine.
At Crazy Snake 1096 wrote,
That is the trick of growing your own food. You have a bit of cost to get the garden set up, but once it is established, the preceding year will yield more savings.
At Dwarf 274 wrote,
Nothing funnier than hearing a southern fella come to the realization that soil grows things. Nah, good work. I see you getting water from a fish pond, was it? Get a bucket and sink it to the bottom for more fish crab. Gross, but good for the plants.
At Joe Farmer 9976 wrote,
You may not have saved money per se from the value of the vegetables grown, but the big thing for me is the sense of pride when you harvest one of your own vegetables and use it in a meal is so good. Just being out there, growing them, looking after them, and seeing the yield will be so good for your well-being.
At Julian 1 wrote,
Secret of spuds is mash and roast can be frozen. Also, anything like tomato sauces can be frozen, even fruit like stewed apples, rhubarb, and jam up your berries. Beans and peas all can be frozen, even cauliflower. With this implementation, you can eat all year round, have 2 harvests of spuds for egg, and freeze a whole harvest. Rather than have wastage, the freezer is your greatest friend.
At Nilton Jr. 2081 wrote,
You have to remember 2 things. 1, wood is still there, so if you grow new crops, you won't have to spend more money too. If you take into consideration the amount of medicines and doctor bill you will save because you're actually digesting better food, you must have saved a loot of money.
And Coppins wrote,
Now that you have a base layer, you won't need as much compost, especially if you start making your own. Here where we live in Austria, I can actually get compost for free at the city compost facility. I save seeds from good crops and plant them next year.
At Dan4447 wrote,
Doesn't it make sense to grow things that are either A, super easy and low maint, B, things that are quite expensive in the store, or C, things like herbs that taste great fresh?
Kim Almighty 1 wrote,
Try to get a hold of Terra Petra soilits from the Amazons. It's far better soil than anything you can find on Earth. Has same effect as fertilizers, but without the chemicals, since it's all organic.
At Altagather Playtubafinger 6045 wrote,
You bought your inputs at retail, which is why you have a 3-year payback. So you haven't lost money, you only have an unreasonable payback time. You'd have made money if you learned to use discards. One man's garbage is another man's treasure. Besides, you might make money on your video. This is your first rodeo, and you must pay an entrance fee. Best wishes and good luck. Keep at it, and don't be afraid to scrounge.
At blah 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 6965 wrote,
What a lot of great looking potatoes. I think when I plant mine this year, I will plant some then plant more a week later, so they can be harvested at different times.
At Ladder of Chaos wrote,
We grow some vegetables in our backyard also, on a bit bigger scale than you, and if you draw the line, the money spent is the same as if we bought the veggies from the store, but the quality and the taste is just so much better compared to the store-bought ones. Even if the cost was twice as much, it would still be worth it for me and my family to have our own garden. If I may suggest, you can get some parsley, basil, and other greens, and plant them. They take no space, and require water every few days, but they cost a fraction of what you gotta pay in the store.
At Necrotechian wrote,
Long story short, initial cost for setup
and not exactly knowing what you're doing makes you probably lose some money on the first year. On the second year, you would probably able to actually make profit since you know what you can or cannot grow personally and there is not much of a setup cost on that year.
Go. D. Wrote.
Why the tuck do we waste time in schools then? As adults, realize schools wasted our time, and we try and grow garden for food. The tucking schools have to change. What the tuck is the point of school, when all it does is leave us hungry and full of useless knowledge. Sorry about the rant.
At Wadiodanog 1887 wrote.
The pizza oven crumbling, I think, is due to the expansion and contraction of the cement in fires and ices. Quite the polar tensions and pressures. Taking a tip from the construction of big buildings, iron beams or iron wire on your scale will help with the tension in the structure. As cement is good under pressure, but not so proficient at resisting tension. Another addition of value I believe worth a try and might work, can't see why not, is paper towels. Essentially, it is wood in really thin slices. Wood has excellent insulating properties. Yes, the wood should recede to some other carbon binding within the oven. Under immense heat, but because the cement covers the wood material and is absorbed into, it can't oxidize aka burn, so should keep a high degree of integrity whilst providing isolative benefits.
At Martin Woodworking wrote.
You can cut the potatoes up for more plants, 1 sprouted eye per piece. Also, any store potatoes will become seed potatoes if you leave them in the cupboard long enough, LOL.
At Shy Off the Moon 1175 wrote.
I know this video is old, but you can deal with slugs and snails with Sluggo, which is considered organic, and copper tape around the tops of your raised beds. They don't like crossing copper. Also, I think I saw powdery mildew on one of your courgette plant's leaves. That's due to not being in enough sun, and I think you can nip it in the bud by spraying the leaves with a vinegar mixture. You can search YouTube for exact recipe. Also, you can cut the potatoes up with a sprout or 2 on each chunk. Let the chunks dry for a couple days, then plant. Planting a whole potato won't yield as many potatoes, as the sprouts are vying for nutrients when they're so close together, and the sprouts that get buried on the underside of the potato probably won't sprout at all.
At Ladybug 591 wrote.
Western societies suddenly seem to be at risk of empty shelves at the supermarket thanks to our crazy politicians. This idea of having a small plot of land to sustain yourself on is very popular in Russia. Many older people toil over their small gardens given to them by their government years and years ago. What a great idea! When the stores have little food on the shelves, one can always go dig around in the garden hoping that the potatoes or cabbage are going to survive. Sustainable lifestyles are such fun. To political elites, there is nothing like destroying a successful system that supplies plentiful food and replacing it with a haphazard, unreliable non-chain of supply. My dad used to have a great vegetable garden in which he worked very hard and constantly on weekends. We no longer have the room in our miserable little backyards, and regulations would not allow just about anything you would need to be self-sustaining. It is a nice little hobby that will get you outside having some exercise, so enjoy. Why not?
At John Cook 3273 wrote.
Raffle, it's mid-February, and you have a dusting of snow. In mid-Feb around Toronto, Aunt. We usually have a couple of feet, and -23, thanks for the laugh.
Chester Manford wrote.
I remember once growing and harvesting a very big courgette by myself. It was close to that one size, a lot wider but shorter. It was tasty.
glad to see more courgettes with immense proportions.
At John Tiller 4327 wrote,
I am fucking amazed that the home of imperial measurement that the English have now taken up metric system. A 100 deep instead of 4. I was amazed. Can you pass on this method of achieving metric quoting to the American? I know this request is near impossible because of the intellect level one have worked with. But you prove it can be achieved.
At Llamanuts 88 wrote,
The benefit of growing your own garden is you don't need to eat it all. We save about 1/4 of the harvest and reuse it for seeding the next year's veggies. We get free horse and chicken poop and mix it with our compost and mix it into the soil every year so we don't need to spend any money on it then either.